Everyone calls Vhagar the Ancient One, the last surviving monster from Aegon's Conquest, the beast whose breath could melt knights inside their armor, the dragon whose roar shook the foundations of Storm's End. But Dragonstone was hiding something older, a dragon without a rider, a dragon without a name in any royal record, a dragon the Targaryens never burned a single enemy with, because they could not get close enough to try. And unlike Vhagar, this dragon did not destroy castles, he destroyed dragons.
The name's Acolyte Wren. The maester's busy today, so you got me. I read the same scrolls. Well, mostly.
By the end of this, you will understand why the oldest dragon in Westeros may not have been the one carrying Aemond Targaryen above the God's Eye. Why the real ancient power on Dragonstone wore no saddle, answered to no Valyrian word, and may have watched the Targaryens arrive from a cave at the back of the mountain.
This is the Black Dread. Subscribe if you would ride a frost dragon.
Start with what we know. Vhagar hatched on Dragonstone in 52 BC, the youngest of the 3 Conquest dragons. She burned Stokeworth's keep at Visenya's command. She destroyed the Arryn fleet at Gulltown. She fought at the Field of Fire, helped force Torrhen Stark to bend the knee, and landed inside the Ares courtyard to make sure the Vale never forgot what fire could do to stone. When Meraxes died at Hellholt in the First Dornish War, Vhagar carried out the dragon's wrath, burning nearly every Dornish stronghold except Sunspear itself. She outlived Visenya, she outlived Maegor, she outlived Balerion. By 94 AC, she was the last living dragon from the Conquest, and by 129 AC, she had grown nearly to Balerion's size. Then a 10-year-old prince named Aemond claimed her on Driftmark, and the world remembered what the oldest dragon could still do. She killed Luce Cerys above Shipbreaker Bay. She killed Maelys at Rook's Rest. She died at the God's Eye, 181 years old, the oldest dragon in every record the maesters had ever written. But 181 years was not old enough, because the smallfolk of Dragonstone told a different story. They said the Cannibal, the coal-black, green-eyed wild dragon who lived at the back of the Dragonmont, was already on that island before the Targaryens arrived in 114 BC. If that rumor was true, then by the time of the dance, the Cannibal would have been close to 250 years old. Older than Vhagar, older than Vermithor. And if the smallfolk were even half right, old enough to make the Targaryen histories look incomplete. Grand Maester Munchen doubted the claim. Septon Eustace doubted it. The official histories quietly buried it, but the people who actually lived on Dragonstone, the fisherfolk, the smallfolk, the men who saw the Dragonmont every morning, kept saying it anyway. Which means the dragon every chronicler counted as the eldest may have been wrong her entire life. If the smallfolk were right, the Targaryens did not bring the cannibal to Dragonstone. They found him there. There were 3 wild dragons living on that island during the dance. Sheepstealer, the brown beast that Nettles would eventually claim with bowls of bloody mutton. Grey Ghost, the pale-scaled dragon who haunted the cliffs. And the cannibal who was not named for what he hunted, but for what he ate. He fed on dead dragons. He fed on newborn dragons. He was said to feast on dragon eggs themselves, which means every hatchling on Dragonstone had a predator living in the same mountain. When Prince Jacaerys called for new riders during the sowing, the desperate dragon seeds tried Sheepstealer. They tried Grey Ghost. None of them dared try the cannibal. The ones who did never came back. Before the dance had even begun, roughly a dozen would-be tamers had tried to claim him. His lair was littered with their bones. Think about what that means. The Valyrians had spent centuries building power around dragon bonding, and the Targaryens inherited the last surviving version of that system. They chained Silverwing to Alysanne, Vermithor to Jaehaerys, dragons to bastards and stable boys during the sowing. They built an entire civilization on the idea that any drop of Valyrian blood, no matter how diluted, could find a dragon to answer it. But this one dragon broke that system. 12 men, 12 dead. Whatever the cannibal was, he did not recognize Valyrian blood at all. This is what makes the cannibal so dangerous to the Targaryen myth. Their dynasty depends on one idea: dragons recognize their blood. But the cannibal turns that idea into a graveyard. He does not care about silver hair. He does not care about old blood. He does not care about the dreams of bastards, princes, or desperate men. To him,
A Valyrian is not a rider, a Valyrian is meat. And there is a theory in the records, quiet, uncomfortable, never quite endorsed, that he was so hostile to the other dragons because he was from a different lineage of dragons altogether. Not bred from any Targaryen line, not bonded to any Dragon Lord house, a wild thing that was already on Dragonstone before the Dragon Lords ever arrived to call it theirs. We have two stories that show what he actually was. The first is Silver Dennis, a man with silver hair and just enough Valyrian blood to believe a dragon was waiting for him. During the sowing, Dennis went after Sheepstealer. Sheepstealer tore his arm off. As his 3 sons tried to stop the bleeding, the cannibal descended out of the dark, drove Sheepstealer off, and devoured all 4 of them where they stood. The second is Grey Ghost. In 130 AC, his body was found at the base of the Dragonmont, burned, broken, partially eaten. Sir Robert Quince, the Castellan of Dragonstone, named the killer without hesitating, the Cannibal. He was wrong. The real killer was Sunfire, dragging himself across the island with a wing he could barely lift. But Quince's mistake is the most revealing detail in the entire story. When a dragon turned up torn apart on the doorstep of the Targaryen seat, the first guess of the men who lived there, the men who knew dragons better than anyone alive, was him. That is not the reputation of a beast. That is the reputation of a curse. So you might think this is the part where I tell you he was the king of Dragonstone. The hidden monarch in the mountain, the true ruler of the dance. He was not. Canon is very clear on one point. Even if the cannibal was older than Vhagar, he was not larger than her. Not larger than Vermithor either. Whatever he was not the biggest dragon on the island. He was not even the most celebrated of the Wild Three. Which makes his story worse, not better. Because if you take the cannibal at face value, he is the dragon who proved age does not equal power. He proved size does not equal seniority. He proved that the Targaryens, for all their banners and bones and bloodlines, were not the first thing on that rock, and maybe not even the dominant thing. Vhagar died at the God's Eye with Aemond chained to her saddle. Her body was hauled from the lake. Her skull was carried back to King's Landing and hung with the others, the proudest trophy of a dynasty that built itself on dragons. Even in death, she belonged to House Targaryen. The cannibal did not. He did not die at the God's Eye. He did not die in the sowing. He may have flown over Corlys Velaryon's sea burial in 132 AC, though Archmaester Gildane doubted the story, even as he wrote it down. Then he vanished, no skull, no final flight, no rider whose name we can attach to his bones. The oldest dragon in Westeros, if the smallfolk were right, simply walked off the page of history. Vhagar is remembered because men rode her, because kings died on her back, because we have her dates, her colours, her riders, her wars, her death. The cannibal is remembered because no one could touch him, because he ate the future of House Targaryen, one egg at a time. Because somewhere on Dragonstone, in the eastern shadow of the Dragonmont, there may still be a cave full of bones. The bones of every man who thought Valyrian blood was enough. Vhagar was the oldest dragon in the records. The cannibal was the oldest dragon in the rumors. And one of those things is far more dangerous than the other. I'm Acolyte Wren at the Black Dread. The maester gets the bones. I get the rumors.